Hi, I'm Gene, and welcome to AssessMinutes, where we take a complex assessment topic and break it down to make it easily understandable, because minutes matter. One idea that some folks stumble over as they try to interpret the scores and the reports of various assessments relates to the concept of the two major types of assessment, norm-referenced and criterion-referenced. So let's take a look at these two, what they're doing, how they are some ways alike, and how they are in some ways operationally quite different as well. When we think about norm-referenced assessments, the bell curve ought to pop into your mind, because it's through these bell curves of distribution of performance that we begin to make meaning of the results. We take students and we compare them to the norm. Where are they falling in here? So any dialogue that we ever have about the mean score, about standard deviations, about percentiles, deciles, quartiles, quintiles, those types of things, that is all language that is inherently couched in a norm-referenced assessment. Again, where the performance of a student is compared against the norm. So for example, a student performing at the 45th percentile is then performing as well as or better than 45% of their academic peers. In contrast, criterion references or referenced assessments, are not overly concerned about how all the kids perform. What they're concerned about is, do the students meet the expectation that is set? So was the student able to reach the top of the wall and make it over to the other side? This is the level of performance that was expected of them. Were they able to clear that? So the real problem about these two types is when we begin to start comparing scores between one another. To be clear, STAR assessments from Renaissance are normed referenced assessments. So we have all those norm-based scores in there. But in some reports, we use statistical linking to say, here's how the student did, and here are some very reliable projections or estimates about what would be likely of their performance against some criterion-referenced assessments like state tests. The problem comes in when we start comparing the different scores. And ultimately it has to do with how tall is the wall that represents the criterion-referenced assessment. It's possible that in some tests someone may have set a very, very high level of expectation. So the criterion reference point is super, super high, which means even some of the students with high percentiles, 70, 75, and 80, if that wall is really tall, they might not even be able to clear it. Conversely, sometimes folks set criterion-referenced levels of expectation that are relatively low. And as a result, what you find is massive numbers of kids, an enormous percentage of those within the curves of distribution are able to clear that reference. Ideally, what we find is they should line up to some degree. There's been a lot of dialogue in our country lately about rising levels of expectation, and one of the things that we can tell you is, and when we look at the more recent test, the expectations have gone higher. So sometimes now you do have students that perform, say, at the 50th, 55th, or maybe even 60th percentile of performance that might not yet be looking over the wall. But again, it's about what are you comparing to? Are you comparing the student to a distribution of their peers? Or are you comparing a student to a particular expectation of performance?